about that. What we identified was that while we were proposing general fund payments towards the mental health debt, we were, in fact, the mental health debt was including services provided to the jail that other mental health funds cannot pay for. And so in identifying that and identifying the fact that that mental health services to the jail need to be paid for and are not part of the debt that mental health is incurring. That's why it's now being identified as such. It is being budgeted at the full amount to the jail. And, you know, I think that this is something that under other circumstances would be contracted out. And indeed, I think at one point was part of the CFMG contract. And so there's an assumption that this is a less expensive way of providing quality services to the jail. This is the cost for it. So it's a continuing priority. We're now identifying it as such, and it doesn't go into the mental health debt because it's in fact not part of their debt. And then ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act implementation, we have a commitment to spend $100,000 a year over a 10-year period, meeting requirements of a plan that the county developed in response to a lawsuit. So that's an ongoing priority, and that's how it's reflected in the budget.
Ms. Glassy, are you aware of the President's plan to substantially increase the ADA requirements in the last 2 days?
I'm not aware specifically, but there's certainly been action on that front. This is in response to a specific case, and it's part of an overall plan. If there are additional requirements that the county might have to meet as a public entity for access or whatever, my hope would be that there is some kind of lead-in time period that governments would have to meet them, but that's not reflected in this amount.
Okay, yeah.
And we will check that out before final budget.
It'll amount to about a 40% increase in ADA requirements, the way I read it, in the last 2 days from Washington. So it's a very substantial increase to ADA requirements. So just a heads up. I would hope there'd be at least a year lead-in, but we don't get to print money like the federal government does. So
I don't think the
Okay.
Lincoln Memorial has ADA accessibility, does it?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this is what we're already spending, so we'll see if
yeah, just a heads up.
thank you.
Just a heads up.
Although that's the wrong kind of heads up. But anyway, okay.
Heads
The
up.
next slide then is priorities from 2008, 2009. The compensation commitments to staff, and I'll talk later about the impact on this year's budget of those. Funding assistance to EMS and fire, the emergency medical services. So in terms of emergency medical services, both of these are subjects of work groups that the board set in motion, and there is, in looking at EMS, they are looking at sources of funding that could be identified possibly within HHSA. In terms of the fire services, the budget has identified $50,000 to put towards that. That's less than last year or this year, obviously, but originally we were looking at putting no funds in, and that didn't seem appropriate. So at the same time, the work groups are actively looking at other funding sources, and I would say that the fire services work group will be ready probably in another month to meet with the board ad hoc committee on this to look at solutions that could be proposed. So our goal is to do further work on this before the final budget.
Supervisor Pinson.
Seems appropriate to bring this up at this time because I think the best help that we can give our EMS and the fire districts, and not only the fire district, but all special districts in Mendocino County, is to do a better job on getting all the unassessed evaluation on the tax rolls that are out there. It is a significant amount. It's a significant revenue for the county, and it's all about fair taxation. And I realize our assessor's office is probably doing all they can with a limited staff, but this is a big county, and there's been a lot of unpermitted building in this county in the last 20 years, and a lot of it is still unassessed. And I think the tools are there, and I've mentioned this before, maybe it's time that the county should contract with an outfit that does this, that goes out and gathers up the unassessed valuation to get it on the tax rolls. That's going to big help to your college district, to all your fire districts, the school districts and everything. And once it gets on the tax rolls, it's there forever. But I think we need to really explore that because, you know, I'm not a fan of more taxes, but this is just about fair taxation, and I think we need to explore that. And that's the best help that we can do to help our EMS and fire districts is through this avenue. And it's all sitting out there. All we got to do is get it recorded and get it on the tax rolls. And I think it's something that we need to, I brought it up in passing last year, but I think our CEO's office needs to basically take it on as a special project. When we combine the assessors and the clerk recorder's office, I think it may have distracted a little bit from the assessment activities. And if I thought it was a minor amount of revenue, I wouldn't keep bringing it up, but I think it's a major amount that we're dealing with here. So.
Okay. Thanks. And that's under our revenue guidelines. So going on down this list, another priority for the board has been water projects coordination, and that has been funded both through general fund as well as the assessed valuation for the water agency, as well as the carryover of funds that were not expended in past years, rather than pulling them into the general fund. I know that seems like a little thing, but we are reserving that in the water agency. Road construction and repair projects, because of the propositions, that's had a major infusion, and so we're looking at around $2.6 million that is reflected in the budget addressing these things with other than county general fund money. The microwave system implementation, as you heard, is around a $290,000, some of that general fund and some of that federal funding, and we are continuing that. In terms of economic development and infrastructure, we're continuing staffing in that area, but we don't have anything budgeted specific for any specific projects in that arena. On the other hand, your investments in UVAP and general plan, as well as the water agency and roads, all support what we're trying to do with infrastructure. And then the Mendocino Town Plan and the local coastal plan updates, we've got around $50,000 budgeted for that, and we do have staff working on that as well. So that's how we're dealing with the priorities from the last 2 years. And then you've already heard this one. There are no new priorities, and we are continuing with that chant here because we've got all of our funds committed, and then some. So we followed a number of budget guidelines. Again, you're familiar with these, but I'm going to translate some of them into dollars. When we reviewed the proposed budgets with the 6% cut in the assigned net county cost, that reflected a savings of around $2.4 million. And so that's what we were looking at in that regard. When we talk about not backfilling state and federal budget cuts, you're talking about around $1.5 million that is connected with that.